Prime Minister Modi and President Donald Trump held a crucial bilateral meeting in Washington, D.C. just a few hours back. There were lots of talking points which have come out of it. The camaraderie between both leaders was clearly on display, with President Trump saying relations with India have never been better. US and India have also agreed to start talks on a trade deal. This even as President Trump cleared an order for a study on reciprocal tariffs. Another big one for India, President Trump has cleared the extradition of 2611 plotter Tahavur Rana. The US President also added that the United States will sell F-35 fighter jets to India, which would, if they agree, join the elite club of countries with the state-of-the-art stealth planes. My colleague Nikunj Garg and Alistair D'Souza report live from Washington, D.C.
Particularly keeping in mind the fact that this comes in so early in this administration. Remember, President Trump's full team has yet not either taken shape or has been confirmed by the Senate. Even the acting chief of protocol at the White House is acting right now because she is yet to get her confirmation from the Senate. So much before the team takes shape, President Trump has invited Prime Minister Modi to Washington, and they have had a fairly fruitful meeting, because as I have been saying that this relationship, it would be unfair on the peoples on both the countries to keep it, to view it from any one prism or to keep it hostage to any particular issue, be it tariffs, be it illegal migration, be it H-1B visas, be it defense cooperation or even high-end tech cooperation. This relationship spawns an entire gamut, and that's what eventually came forth. As the Foreign Secretary said, that the issue of tariffs was raised in a very normal manner, thereby implying that there was absolutely no pressure or aggressive stance displayed either by the American delegation, American teams, or by the President himself during the discussions, both at the delegation level and at the summit level. Now, to talk about the highlights of this very substantive and productive visit as described by the Indian Foreign Secretary, my sense is that in terms of taking where they left during President Trump's first term, both leaders have done an exceedingly good job. Because repeatedly, President Trump, I heard him in the Oval Office where I was allowed to be present, and I heard him at the White House's press conference, the press conference hall of the White House. Of course, we heard the joint statement too by both the leaders given separately. President Trump repeatedly referred to the good work that he was able to do and achieve in collaboration with Prime Minister Modi during his first term. So in that sense, in fact, the beginning was that we missed you at the White House, and then, of course, going ahead, he said that the Prime Minister is a great leader and he's doing a lot of good work back home. So in terms of rekindling that warmth, in terms of reworking that chemistry, now that once again it's the Trump's White House, they have done an exceedingly good job. Other than the fact that substantive issues like dealing with the thorny issue of tariff and illegal migration and dealing with the expansion, Prime Minister said right in the very beginning of his statement that he wishes to expand, he wishes to broad base this relationship. He said, "Hum is relationship ki vyapakta chahte hain," and which means that he wanted to spread this relationship far and beyond from where it has reached already. That showed in finally concretizing the output in the form of India opening 2 new consulates in Los Angeles and Boston, which makes this India's largest diplomatic presence anywhere in the world and by any country in the United States of America too. So that clearly shows you the depth of this relationship. In terms of trade deficit, an issue overwhelmingly spoken about, principally driven by the fact that President Trump has issued certain executive orders on tariff on certain countries. The Foreign Secretary just summed up by saying that, look, we are already a big purchaser of American energy. Nearly $15 billion of purchase last year. And by the by, as we expand our energy basket, as we expand the contours of our energy purchase from a multidimensional point of view, not wanting to remain hostage to any particular source, that purchases will go up to nearly $25 billion. Now, that's a huge sum of money. Now, irrespective of transactional value, my sense is that the strength of this relationship is principally driven by the bond of the people. The people-centric policies will always remain the centerpiece of any relationship as far as the democracies are concerned. And in this case also, look at the numbers. Nearly 3 million Indian students in American universities. Quite clearly, parents back in India, despite this country being the farthest from our motherland, feel completely safe in sending their children to American universities and know that there is a bright future that awaits them once they graduate out of those universities. Diaspora is an extremely strong component, one of the best performing ethnic groups, so to say, in the United States of America, well placed, contributing immensely in almost all fields of life. And then there are tech CEOs in the AI complex that India and the United States seem to agree to build now going forward. President Trump was quite emphatic, quite characteristically so, that when it comes to AI, America is way ahead of other countries, but he said that others will try to do a catch-up act on that, and we must watch out against that, or in a sense watch out for that. He said that it may take other countries half a decade, but they will certainly try to do a catch-up act. Nonetheless, however, the fact of the matter remains that in both the cases, whether it is high-tech transfer or whether it is people-to-people engagement and cooperation, leaders have taken substantive steps forward, which going forward the teams have got their tasks cut out. But when the push comes right from the top, my sense is that that job becomes much more well-oiled and much more easier.
Nikunj Garg there reporting from Washington, D.C. To discuss the bilateral further, I'm joined on the broadcast by Dr. Arvind Gupta, Head of Digital India Foundation, Dr. Tara Kartha, former Director and National Security Council Secretariat, and Shruti Pandale, Fellow of IDSA. Thank you to all of you for joining me on the broadcast. Before we go across to my guests, let me start with, we have in a way segregated some of the key takeaways from this meeting, and the first one, of course, is the clear bond between the two world leaders, which came through, which we have had all our panelists commenting on through the morning today, on how there was a clear camaraderie on display between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi. Let's take a look at some of the comments which have come in from both world leaders on each other.
There is truly a special bond between the United States and India, and the world's oldest democracy and the world's largest democracy, and I believe the world's largest country in terms of the numbers of people. And today the Prime Minister and I are announcing a framework to strengthen those ties even further economically, and the U.S.-India Compact for the 21st century is a historic initiative that will deepen every aspect of our partnership and our friendship.
हम मानते हैं कि भारत और अमेरिका का साथ और सहयोग एक बेहतर विश्व को शेप कर सकता है। फ्रेंड्स, अमेरिका के लोग राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप के मोटो मेक अमेरिका ग्रेट अगेन यानी मागा से परिचित है। भारत के लोग भी विरासत और विकास की पटरी पर विकसित भारत 2047 के दृढ़ संकल्प को लेकर तेज गति शक्ति से विकास की ओर अग्रसर है। अमेरिका की भाषा में कहूं तो विकसित भारत का मतलब मेक इंडिया ग्रेट अगेन यानी मिगा। जब अमेरिका और भारत साथ मिलकर काम करते हैं यानी मागा, मागा प्लस मिगा, तब बन जाता है मेगा पार्टनरशिप फॉर प्रॉस्पेरिटी। और यही मेगा स्पिरिट हमारे लक्ष्यों को नया स्केल और स्कोप देती है।
Right. I want opening comments from all my guests on this. Dr. Arvind Gupta, starting with you first. Do you think, in a way, US-India relations after this key meeting has been elevated to the next level?
Yeah, I think, thank you for having me on your show, Halima. I've seen as a student when I came in the early 90s to today, different prime ministers interacting with the different presidents of the US. And I must say that Prime Minister Modi's charisma, his ability to connect is really paying rich dividends in elevating this relationship to the next level. You thought 4 years ago, Prime Minister Modi's relationship was great with President Trump when he was, when we hosted the events. Prime Minister hosted him in Ahmedabad or in Houston. But I think this 2-day visit, very short visit, has elevated to a different level. The warmth, the ceremonial reception, the staying at Blair House are all indicative of the importance and the personal chemistry between the two world leaders. And I think President Trump, who is actually shocking Washington, the establishment here, with this really, really aggressive push towards a lot of reform, has come out very positively and talked about his relationship with India, the importance of India in the US geopolitics and the political economy, the importance of his personal relationship with Prime Minister Modi. I think we are going from height to another height between, under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi in India and now, of course, President Trump here in the US. I must say that this is the very substantial visit for a very, very compressed in less than 24 hours of working time. So great outcomes. Nikunj has from NDTV just summarized the outcomes. I personally feel that the message around MEGA was cooperation, very succinctly summarized by the Prime Minister. I also saw substantial statements, of course, around autonomous vehicles, which, I heard very little about an alliance for autonomous vehicles systems, to around AI. He said the two largest countries, because India has the skill set, the largest skilled human resources for developing AI. 25% of AI gets developed in India, another 15% by Indians living overseas. So that's about 40% people. And with the infrastructure and the capacity that the US has, so both from research perspective and solving for real world problems, especially coming after the AI Action Summit in Paris, right, I think this is a very, very substantial development that will go a lot further in developing the quality of life in both right societies.
Right. Shruti, coming to you next, do you see this as a natural progression between India and US relations, between Prime Minister Modi and President Donald Trump, particularly from the first term of President Trump?
Thanks, Tanima, for having me on the show. I think what we've seen over the last 24 hours is a reaffirmation of the utility of the India relationship to the United States. And we've seen that across administrations, starting from that of Bill Clinton. So, I think there was a hope in New Delhi that muscle memory from Trump 1.0 will kick in as Prime Minister Modi makes his way to Washington. And what we've been seeing is basically that Prime Minister Modi was able to sort of create new avenues for cooperation, manage sort of expectations given the kind of hype around the tariff wars that was going on ahead of this visit, and align ecosystems to ensure ties stay on the course. So the body language obviously has been extremely positive. Someone like Trump coming out with humility and saying that Prime Minister Modi is a much tougher negotiator compared to him tells you that the optics of the visit have gone perhaps better than what New Delhi had anticipated. And that's why you see the statement coming out of the Prime Minister's office saying that this has been a substantive and productive visit, and so is the Foreign Secretary's briefing. But I think if you go down to the brass tacks and see some of the announcements that have come in a year that we're hosting the Quad presidency, you have a lot more positive sort of noises
Right.
coming out of Washington saying that, they're going to support the endeavor. You have defense cooperation deals coming in where there is an element of reciprocity, especially where our concerns regarding access to technology matter. You have a host of announcements on AI, the initiative on the Autonomous Systems Industry Alliance, a lot on the energy front and also on the technology and innovation front, which would all
Right.
go back into saying that if we had gone to manage expectations, we had prepared our tariff discussions well to ensure that it's not seen as threatening from President Trump point of view. So I think we've come back, at least from the optics and the continuity perspective, with a lot of reassurance.
Right. Dr. Tara Kartha, quickly, your opening thoughts on this.
Fantastic body language, as Shruti said. What I really like is the MEGA plus MAGA equals mega. I mean, that was just spot on, right? But, the main thing is this is a working visit. You've seen it from day one. Jaishankar goes. I mean, this thing has been packed into it. It's not a state visit. So the PM has gone there to get a deal and he's got it. And actually, to be honest, I was expecting a really tough Trump, position, which has not seen. I mean, it's more like a kind of family visit, right? Elon Musk goes there with his children, Tulsi Gabbard goes, everybody's welcoming him. So the stage was set for a very, very good optics. Having said that, there has been clearly some very, very tough negotiations now, and there's a lot of tough stuff coming up. In terms of autonomous vehicles, for instance, there's a bunch of Indian startups who are doing extremely well. So this is a two-way street. Technology, let's see what comes. So far, nothing has come to us at all. Even the engines which we'd asked for has yet to come. So during the Biden administration, it did slow down. So I'm pretty sure Trump is going to take a whip and make sure that much of this comes quickly. F-35, which I think I said on your show 2 days ago, that you can expect that the Defense Ministry has just put out a AON for 114 aircraft. So that is probably going to come up. Lots of stuff. So great. I mean, we really, all of us are going to have to really work to sort of decode the joint statement.
Right. I request all my guests to stay with us. We'll actually have to head into a very short break, but we will be continuing with this discussion further. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching NDTV special broadcast of the Prime Minister's visit to the US. He's just wrapped up a very successful bilateral with President Donald Trump. We are discussing on the show several aspects and the main takeaways from that meeting. And one of the key points or main aspects, of course, is the relationship that India and the US have in a way with China, in a way tackling China. That is the issue that we're going to look at. And let's listen in to what President Donald Trump had to say on the ties with China.
I think we're going to have a very good relationship with China. I got along with President Xi very well until COVID. That was a bridge too far. But until then, I got along with President Xi very, very well. We were very close as leaders go. I don't want to be naive, but as leaders go, I think we were very close. And I think that China is a very important player in the world. I think they can help us get this war over with Ukraine and Russia. And I look at India, I do see the skirmishes on the border, which are quite vicious, and I guess they continue to go on. If I could be of help, I'd love to help, because that should be stopped. That's been going on for a long time, and it's quite violent. It's quite violent, but I would hope that China and India and Russia and U.S. and all of us can get along. It's very important.
Right. My guests are still with me on the show. Shruti, coming to you on this. How should India view this statement coming in from Donald Trump during that joint briefing? In a way, he's also thrown in an offer to mediate talks between India and China, so to speak. But considering what he had to say about Xi Jinping and his relations with China, how should the Indian establishment view this?
I think, it's been very clear that President Trump's outreach to President Xi Jinping, even as he threatens China with tariffs, and his team talks tough on Taiwan. And remember the two people, the Secretary of State, Mr. Rubio, as well as Mike Waltz, his national security advisor, both at the confirmation hearing, had a very hawkish stance on China. So you have an administration where there is a push and pull on what the China policy is going to look like. But it's very clear from his point of view, at least, that he's looking at a trade deal with China, not unlike his first term. So the whole talk on tariffs has been so that you can push China to come to the negotiating table. But what this administration will be different from the previous one under President Biden, I think, would be that business interests will matter as much as interests on securing the strategic edge. So if you saw recently with Trump asking Supreme Court to drop the ban on TikTok, have been fanning sort of concerns of a flip-flop. So I think for Prime Minister Modi, what this visit would have been doing is to see that if managing China was a shared interest for India-US ties, getting a sense of what Washington's agenda with Beijing will be, getting a reading of the room would be one. Two, I think one of the biggest complaints India's had vis-a-vis our relationship with Beijing is that it's always come through a prism of a lens from a third-party lens, which is via Washington. So I'm not sure the comments on managing our relationship will be taken too much to heart here in New Delhi. But I think the idea that of how Beijing and Washington will proceed on their relationship will have ramifications in the way we look at our relationships, including in the Indo-Pacific. So I think those conversations will matter going forward.
Right. We have very less time left on the discussion. Quick word from both Dr. Tara Kartha and Dr. Arvind Gupta on this. Dr. Kartha, you first.
See, there's one constant in US policy. They don't like competition. I mean, this is Trump's national security policy also says they don't like anybody going ahead of the US. That's the baseline for dealing with China. The rest is, it is transactional. Yes, you'll have trade deals and all the rest of it, but they're not going to give an inch. Number two, what I really want to say is that, his cabinet, I won't call them hawkish on China. I'd say they're realistic on China. China is getting places. You need to understand that. And we, by ourselves, cannot deal with it. Let's be very clear.
Right.
Don't have the capability. I think I'll go to your next speaker.
Right. Dr. Arvind Gupta.
Number one, you said it. I'm going to just repeat the same. India and China is a bilateral issue. India has always said that, and we will, whatever our issues are, we are making headway in resolving those. So I think it's a good kind offer, but I think India will always prefer its own way of solving it. Two, China is important in the global trade, as we all know, but it poses a lot of challenges to the MAGA story also. So I think President Trump has kind of said that he has a good working relationship with President Xi there, but he also said that I would be naive in knowing the issues around it. So it's a balance that they're striking with China. As far as India is concerned, we have to watch how that goes. But we have to first watch out for our own interest. And I think with the Prime Minister's visit, our relationship with the US is at a different level. And I think how America works with China is to be seen. But one thing is for sure, that the US is really pushing heavily on the BRICS arrangement, and India will have to watch out for how that develops, because India is one of the most important parts of the BRICS, and we'll have to see how this whole narrative around BRICS and US-China grows from here on.
Right. Shruti Pandale, Dr. Arvind Gupta, Dr. Tara Kartha, thank you so much for joining me on the broadcast. We'll be heading into a short break, but more news and updates will continue right here on NDTV 24/7. Stay with us. Now, we are looking at different aspects of what has come through on the India-US bilateral meeting. And we are in a way segregating what are some of the key takeaways which have come through from this meeting. And one of them, of course, has been talks on tackling illegal immigration, beg your pardon. And as we know that the US has in fact taken a very aggressive stance. President Trump has taken a very aggressive stance when it comes to tackling the menace of illegal immigrants, as he calls it. And Prime Minister Modi, in their joint briefing today, in a way said that India is also firm on the fact that while there is no problem in terms of legal mobility when it comes to students and people who are working in the United States, but India is firmly with the US when it comes to tackling illegal immigration, and that India is ready to take back proven illegal immigrants. Let's listen in to the comments which have come in from Prime Minister Modi as well as the Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri on this.
सवाल सिर्फ भारत का नहीं है, वैश्विक रूप से हम इस बात के हैं कि गैर कानूनी तरीके से जो लोग दूसरे देशों में होते हैं उनको वहां रहने का कोई कानूनी अधिकार तो है नहीं। जहां तक भारत और अमेरिका का सवाल है, हमने हमेशा कहा है कि जो वेरीफाइड होगा, कि जो सच्चे अर्थ में भारत का ही नागरिक होगा, वो अगर अमेरिका में गैर कानूनी तरीके से रहता है तो उसको वापस लेने के लिए भारत तैयार है। लेकिन बात हमारे लिए वहां से रुकती नहीं है। ये सामान्य परिवारों के बच्चे होते हैं, उनको बड़े बड़े सपने दिखाए जाते हैं और उनको ज्यादातर ऐसे होते हैं उनको गुमराह करके लाया जाता है। और इसलिए ये ह्यूमन ट्रैफिकिंग में जुड़े हुए पूरे इकोसिस्टम पर हमने वार करना चाहिए। और अमेरिका और भारत मिल करके हमारी कोशिश है और हमारी कोशिश रहनी चाहिए कि इस प्रकार की पूरी इकोसिस्टम को हमें जड़ मूल से नष्ट करना चाहिए ताकि ह्यूमन ट्रैफिकिंग बंद हो।
Insofar as the issue of illegal immigration is concerned, yes, it did figure during the discussions today. And the Prime Minister said, as I think he mentioned during the press conference as well, and during the discussions also he said that India has made its stand very clear that if there are illegal immigrants proven to be Indian citizens in any country abroad, we will take them back. But he did emphasize, and again I think he referred to this in his remarks at the press conference, but even during the discussions, he did emphasize that the return of illegal immigrants is not the end of the story. There is an ecosystem that thrives on this racket and that promotes and enables this racket. And it is the responsibility of both countries to do something about this.
Another one of the top takeaways for India, in fact, a big win for India in terms of getting justice for 2611 victims, was what President Trump had to say about extradition of Thakur Rana. Remember, Thakur Rana is identified and accused by India as being one of the main conspirators when it comes to the 2611 attack in Mumbai. And today we saw President Trump in a way backing India's bid for extradition, saying that countering terrorism, when it comes to countering terrorism, US is firmly with India, and that he has in a way cleared Thakur Rana's extradition back to the country. Prime Minister Modi also thanked President Trump on this and said that India and US will work together to counter terror. Listen in to the comments coming in from both leaders on this.
The United States and India will be working together like never before to confront the threat of radical Islamic terrorism, a threat all over the world, actually. Today, I'm pleased to announce that my administration has approved the extradition of one of the plotters and one of the very evil people of the world, and having to do with the horrific 2008 Mumbai terrorist attack to face justice in India. So he's going to be going back to India to face justice. We're giving a very violent man, it seems to me. I mean, I don't know that he's been convicted yet or will be, but let's assume he's a pretty violent person. We're giving him back to India immediately, and there are more to follow because we have quite a few requests. So we work with India on crime, and we want to make it good for India, and it's very important. So that kind of a relationship is very important to us.
आतंकवाद के खिलाफ लड़ाई में भारत और अमेरिका दृढ़ता से साथ खड़े रहे हैं। हम सहमत हैं कि सीमा पार आतंकवाद के उन्मूलन के लिए ठोस कार्रवाई आवश्यक है और मैं राष्ट्रपति जी का आभारी हूं। उन्होंने 2008 के जिसने भारत में नरसंहार किया था उस मुजरिम को अब भारत के हवाले करने का निर्णय किया है। भारत की अदालतें उचित कार्यवाही करेंगी।
Right, we'll be heading into a short break, but we will continue to bring you highlights of the bilateral meeting between India and US in Washington, D.C. Stay tuned to NDTV for it. Welcome back. We're continuing with our coverage of Prime Minister Modi and President Donald Trump's meeting in Washington, D.C. Prime Minister Modi, of course, has wrapped up a very successful trip to the U.S. and one of the points, which is, of course, a talking point for us as well, something which there has been a lot of buzz about is the reciprocal tariff issue. Now, today we did hear from President Donald Trump speaking about it, that he has cleared a study, a 6-month study into the issue of reciprocal tariffs. We know that the US has already imposed reciprocal tariffs on certain countries, in a way including China, Canada and Mexico. There's no specific announcement made with regard to India, though in the past President Trump has in fact said that India in a way is the king of tariffs. But for the moment, no specific announcement to that. What has come through, though, is the fact that US and India are now going to draw up a trade agreement in order to boost the trade relations between the two countries. There's also an extensive discussion which both sides had as far as energy security and the possibility of India procuring more crude oil as well as liquefied nitrogen gas from US. So on that front, there has been an extensive discussion. That's what the Foreign Secretary also had to say. But let's take a look now at some of the statements which were made by both Prime Minister Modi and President Trump on trade relations between India and US.
Friends, आज हमने द्विपक्षीय व्यापार को 2030 तक 2 गुना से भी अधिक बढ़ाकर $500 बिलियन तक पहुंचाने का लक्ष्य निर्धारित किया है। हमारी टीमें एक पारस्परिक लाभकारी ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट को शीघ्र संपन्न करने पर काम करेगी। भारत की ऊर्जा सुरक्षा सुनिश्चित करने में हम ऑयल तथा गैस ट्रेड को बल देंगे। ऊर्जा इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में निवेश भी बढ़ेगा। न्यूक्लियर एनर्जी क्षेत्र में हमने स्मॉल मॉड्यूलर रिएक्टर्स की दिशा में सहयोग बढ़ाने पर भी बात की।
Starting this year, we'll be increasing military sales to India by many billions of dollars. We're also paving the way to ultimately provide India with the F-35 stealth fighters. In 2017, my administration revived and reinvigorated the Quad security partnership. In our meeting today, the Prime Minister and I reaffirmed that strong cooperation among the United States, India, Australia, and Japan. And it's crucial, really, to maintaining peace and prosperity, tranquility. Well, India's been to us, just about the highest tariffed nation anywhere in the world. They've been very strong on tariffs, and I don't blame them necessarily, but it's a different way of doing business. It's very hard to sell into India because they have trade barriers, very strong tariffs. We are right now a reciprocal nation. We are going to, if it's India or if it's somebody else with low tariffs, we're going to have the same. We're going to have whatever India charges, we're charging them. Whatever another country charges, we're charging them. So it's called reciprocal, which I think is a very fair way. I had discussions with India in the first term about the fact that their tariffs were very high, and I was unable to get a concession.
Who was a tougher negotiator today, and who has a better negotiating tactic when it comes to tariffs?
Oh, he's a much tougher negotiator than me, and he's a much better negotiator than me. There's not even a contest.
A light-hearted comment there coming in from President Trump on Prime Minister Modi. In fact, my colleague Alistair D'Souza reports on the body language and the camaraderie between the two leaders.
Questions asked earlier that would still remain in Trump 2.0, and we certainly saw that today. And today was really about establishing common ground, in some ways keeping that tough talk to a later date. Now, Nikunj alluded to some of those trade talk that went on as far as business cooperation and cooperation on other fronts when it comes to Quad, counterterrorism, and as far as business goes, AI, and also defense deals. Now, one of the highlights that stood out was President Trump talking about potentially selling to India F-35 stealth military aircraft. Now, this would put India in an elite club. U.S. doesn't give these aircraft to anyone and everyone. It's to an elite club of nations, including NATO countries, also Israel or Japan, for that matter. So on the headlines, it looked great, but also then when you get to the fine print, there will be questions asked. For example, this F-35, some defense analysts saying that this could potentially take years. And one of the stumbling blocks for India to actually get this is India's defense relationship with Russia. Now, for example, India has already committed in 2018 to getting Russia's S-400 defense system, and that might prove to be a problem. The reason being, if we go by past precedent, as far as Turkey's deal with Russia goes, Turkey's deal with the U.S. goes, where the U.S. looked at co-production of these F-35s in Turkey, well, that fell off the bandwagon simply because Turkey then had gone ahead and struck this S-400 defense deal with Russia. So questions asked on that front. Now, we also saw Narendra Modi talk about Donald Trump's MAGA, Make America Great Again, and he borrowed a phrase from MAGA, and he talked about it's also about Make India Great Again as well. And he said MAGA and MIGA put together would potentially mean mega trade cooperation and deals between the two sides. But then again, questions asked about how this would go forward when some would argue that these are essentially protectionist approaches to doing business. So how would you get those mega deals in the future?
And the Russia-Ukraine war also came up during the joint address by both leaders. Listen into what they had to say.
Russia has gotten themselves into something that I think they wish they didn't. If I were president, it would not have happened. Absolutely would not have happened. And it didn't happen for 4 years. If you look at what has taken place under President Bush, they lost a lot. Under President Obama, they lost Crimea. Under Biden, it looks like they could lose the whole thing. Under Trump, they lost nothing. Ukraine lost nothing. They didn't give up anything. And you take a look at the other three presidents surrounding me, they gave up a lot. I think that when you look at Ukraine and when you look at the mess that they're in, it's got to be ended and it's got to be stopped. Now, Russia's taken over a pretty big chunk of territory. And they also have said from day one, long before President Putin, they've said they cannot have Ukraine be in NATO. They said that very strongly. I actually think that that was the thing that caused the start of the war. And Biden said it, and Zelensky said it, and I think that was one of the reasons, one of the starts of the war. But from long before Putin, they said you cannot have Ukraine going in any way into NATO. And I start from that standpoint. I think everybody knew that. Now, if a better deal can be negotiated, if they are able to make a deal where they can do that, that's fine with me. I really don't care. I want that bloodshed to stop. I don't want to see, we have an ocean between us and the site we're talking about, the site of death. We're calling it the fields of death. We have a big ocean in between us. This is more important for Europe. We shouldn't be in. They have to equalize, and they're going to have to do it fast, but they have to equalize. But as far as the negotiation, it's too early to say what's going to happen. Maybe Russia will give up a lot. Maybe they won't. And it's all dependent on what is going to happen. The negotiation really hasn't started. But I will say, as far as NATO is concerned, from many years before President Putin, I will tell you that I've heard that Russia would never accept that. And I think Ukraine knew that, because Ukraine wasn't in and never requested to be in until more recently. So that's the way it is, and I think that's the way it's going to have to be.
आप जानते हैं, मैं रशिया और यूक्रेन दोनों से लगातार संपर्क में रहा हूं। मैं स्वयं भी दोनों देश की मुलाकात कर चुका हूं। बहुत से लोगों का एक भ्रम है कि भारत न्यूट्रल है। मैं साफ करना चाहता हूं, भारत न्यूट्रल नहीं है। हमारा अपना एक पक्ष है, और हमारा पक्ष है शांति, पीस। और मैंने इसी एक हमारे सिद्धांत को लेकर के राष्ट्रपति पुतिन की हाजिरी में मीडिया के सामने स्पष्ट रूप से कहा था कि युद्ध का समय नहीं है। और आज भी मेरा कन्विक्शन है कि युद्ध के मैदान में समस्याओं के समाधान नहीं निकलते हैं, अल्टीमेटली वार्ता के टेबल पर ही होते हैं। और भारत का लगातार प्रयास रहा है कि दोनों लोग जिसमें मौजूद हो, वैसे फोरम में बातचीत होगी, तब कोई रास्ता निकलेगा। राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप जो प्रयास कर रहे हैं, मैं उनका स्वागत करता हूं, समर्थन करता हूं, और मैं चाहता हूं कि राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप हो सके उतना जल्दी सफल हो, ताकि दुनिया में शांति के रास्ते खुले।
Congressman McCormick, thank you so much for speaking to us here on NDTV. We of course had lengthy discussions on what were some of the key takeaways for India, but for the world, how are you viewing, especially from the US, this big visit by Prime Minister Modi?
Well, first of all, it shows what important partners we are in the strategic alliance going forward. That region of the world that has 70% of the world's population, which about 70% of the world's wealth travels through those corridors, where you have huge military presences in both countries, in China, in India. Of course, you have a nuclear peer in Pakistan. Just having somebody in that region that sees the world very similarly, who has a constitution that's very similar, who has aspirations to be the third largest economy in the world in the next 5 years. Somebody who could be a great trading partner, somebody who could buy military equipment from us, someone who can really become so close and really become allies so that we can protect each other into the future and really progress together.
Congressman McCormick, how do you think, India should be viewing? Of course, it was a good meeting. That's been the general view for everybody who has, in fact, talked to us after the bilateral as well as the joint statement that we heard from both leaders. But how do you think India should view Trump 2.0 government? We are, of course, interested, as the Foreign Affairs Ministry spokesperson also said, in terms of progressing naturally from the first era of the Trump government now to this one. But, we've seen a more aggressive stance being taken by President Trump on many fronts, of course. So, according to you, how should India be viewing the current U.S. government and the engagements that we can have in the near future?
Sure. Well, let's talk about what's the same first. Prime Minister Modi came over here, had a big get together in Houston, and there was a huge turnout. In my district, we have about 14% of my district is made up of Indian diaspora. Huge, very important. One of the reasons that we're the top 5 district in America in wealth because of the Indian diaspora. The age-old friendship between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump is well known. They get along very well. They see the world very similarly. What has changed, though, are a couple things. First of all, Ukraine. Since the invasion of Ukraine, one of the major ways that Russia has funded this war is by selling oil to India and then them reselling it back to Europe, who, of course, that purchases all the money that Russia needs to fund this war. President Trump and Prime Minister Modi made a great agreement in which the United States will become its primary supplier of energy for both oil and gas. I think that's going to be really important into the future for stabilizing the regions and to make sure that there's no motivation to continue this war in Ukraine, funded through really not good ways, quite frankly. And I think, too, in this one, we have to make sure that the American people are seeing the same perception for all countries, that if we're being imposed tariffs, and I know that I heard the reporting earlier that it's not that big a deal. To America, it's been a big deal because for a long time, we've been on the short end of the stick. The average tariffs we place on Indian products is about 2 to 3%. The average from India is about 13 to 15%. I think President Trump just want to make sure this it's reciprocal, that it's even, that it gives us a fair and balanced trading, whether it's 0 or it's 15%. We want to have it the same so we can have a true free trade society.
And with that, it's a wrap from my side. My colleague Aditi will join you on the other side of this very short break as news and updates continue here on NDTV.